Something happened to me over the past 10 days that caused me crippling fear like I haven't experienced very much, if at all, in my life, or definitely in the past 10 years of my sobriety. So the question is not only what happened, but what are we taught to do about crippling fear in these situations in recovery? And did I do what I was supposed to do from what I know, what I've been taught? Let's get into it.
I'm JT. I'm in my mid-30s, have a 10-year media career, and nearly a decade of sobriety. So how did another middle-class kid turn into a blackout drunk and a heroin junkie? More importantly, how did it change, and where do we go from here? This is my story.
So what happened to me a couple Wednesdays ago, about 10 days ago, is, and I don't even want to use the H word because I've put it out there and immediately had to delete it because it caused even more problems for me. Let's just say several of my social media accounts were infiltrated, and it was scary as hell. And before I get into what happened and all the details and did I handle things right, let me just say, I get it that this is something that happens to people every single day, and I'm embarrassed. I'm not only embarrassed that it happened, I'm incredibly embarrassed that it caused me so much fear because I wish I didn't care about social media that much. I wish I didn't have so much of my career invested in it because, you know what, frankly, I don't really care for social media very much. I don't think, and I really truly believe this, I don't think that I would be that involved with social media at all if I didn't have the day-to-day job that I have in the media. It is an absolute requirement of my job to be on it. I don't like it. I struggle with it. I don't even really post that much, but it really breaks almost everything inside me to talk about myself. And in fact, these videos, this YouTube channel, and then therefore posting about it, taking clips or whatever and putting it on social media is kind of my sort of life hack because I do feel altruistic in these videos. And so I therefore feel comfortable putting them out there because I know I've gotten feedback that it is helping people. Aside from that, and then posting stuff about work, which is promotional, which I'm supposed to do, I really don't have a lot of cares for. I like to keep up with old friends and family, but I just think it's insidious. And I can't even open it without seeing things that make me cringe. And so to this have been such a monumental negative point in my life is incredibly embarrassing. And I kind of tossed and turned about even opening up about it and talking about it. I haven't posted anything that anyone can see. So this is the first that I'm talking about it in the past 10 days. But you know what? I thought about it and it actually does really tie in to some things that are very important in recovery. And so that's what I'm going to talk about. So just know from the outset, I get it. There are real problems in the world. You are dealing with much realer problems than this, I'm sure. And I have dealt with much realer problems than this. But I do think that speaks to how much social media has crept into our lives and how unavoidable it kind of all is. So let's get into it a little bit. What happened to me, and again, I'm not going to go into all the gory details about how it happened. I realize it could help people to know to look out for it, but I'm just telling you, I'm so incredibly gun shy about talking about the specific details of this thing because it was that overwhelming for me, and I don't know if it's completely over, to be honest with you. So I'll just say, and I think this part is important because to know state of mind when it happened, right? It happened on a Wednesday evening, a Wednesday night, really. I was really tired. I'd had to run a bunch of errands after work, so we're talking late afternoon, evening, and it was honestly creeping up to the time that I'm usually at home getting ready for bed. But because I'd run these errands, I had not worked out yet, and we know, I've told you how big a deal exercise is for me in my life and recovery, and I had one of those moments, right, where I was like, I really could probably just go home now. Then I thought to myself, no, this is what I do. This is what I do to feel right. And I know, even though it's late, this is going to affect my sleep. It could affect my whole next day. So I need to go ahead and do it. So I was tired. I was probably hungry. It was in the middle of the week. And I was kind of rushing through things and focusing on other things. And let's just say I got hit with an incredibly sophisticated infiltration of my social media that I had to actively participate in, but that just totally took me by surprise. Now, if I had just gone home that night and not, kind of kept pushing myself, would I have been of more sound mind to deal with it properly and this not happen? Maybe. But again, this was incredibly sophisticated. So immediately when this happened, I know automatically that someone has my accounts. It is nefarious because I can see what's being posted and it on my account, and it was horrifying. Now, luckily, the accounts kind of demolish themselves by the social media code. They kind of have settings that'll make it do that. So I haven't received any messages or anything like, oh, hey, I saw this crazy thing or anything like that. So I don't know how far it spread. And to be frank, I haven't really wanted to ask anybody if they saw it because it mortified me. So obviously, first of all, I'm scared to death because someone has my stuff and I don't know what they're going to do with it, what more they're going to do with it. I don't know what's going to happen to me from this stuff getting posted on it. And so then the next thing I start to think of is, oh my God, my radio station, the accounts for the radio station are linked to my accounts. So I'm terrified that something bad is going to happen with those. Fast forward, because I want to make sure no one gets too worried that I'm talking about this. That was all taken care of very quickly, but I didn't know. I didn't know for about another 24 hours if all that was going to be the case. So just to put in perspective, immediately what I'm afraid of is what's out there on my accounts, and is my job and people I care about going to be affected by this? Then I had a little more time to think about it, and I'm starting to take action and email people and all this stuff. And then there was another level. There was a couple more levels of fear that I had not quite thought of yet. The next thing is, oh my gosh, is my identity going to be okay? The next thing is I have financial things connected to those accounts. What do people have their hands on? And then beyond that, I was fearful because, like I said, this is so tied to my job, and I'd spent years building these accounts up. Again, not something I ever would have done. I promise you, I would not have 12,000 Instagram followers if I was not in radio. I don't even think I deserve the ones I have, to be quite honest with you. So all that stuff's starting to creep in, and most importantly, the identity stuff financially. So I'm up all night, changing passwords, all that stuff. I get no sleep, which I wouldn't have slept anyways because my adrenaline is going a million miles a minute. Now, I know this happens to people all the time, but to speak to the business side of this for me and everything like that, I unfortunately started doing some research on what happens to people in these situations and what was a likely outcome for me. I was trying to figure out, could I do anything about it in the moment? Because as you know, I'm a big, how can I handle this right now person. I've been taught to be that. I'm not that naturally. But what I've come to find, and please, I really want to hear from you if this is happening to you, is that most people in these situations never get their accounts back. And you just got to start over. And that was mortifying, okay? That was mortifying because I have so much tied into this for my business. Again, not happy about that, embarrassed that that's the case, but it is the case. So again, I am almost ashamed that this affected me as much as it did, but it did. And there was all this limbo time, right? I didn't sleep for a couple days because I was just going about what's going to happen. And I start dealing with these things. And the best way I can describe it is I was walking around for about 5 days just with the worst pit in my stomach. It's almost like the feeling, I'm not saying that I thought these things were going to happen, but the feeling I had was comparable to feelings I've had in the past when I thought someone that I loved was going to die or get hurt or something like that. Or I thought something terrible was going to happen with a big investment like my house. Or I thought I was going to lose my job. Again, didn't think those things were going to happen because of this, but that was the similar feeling. It's just walking around with a huge pit in your stomach, waiting for the other shoe to drop, something more. This is bad, and it could get even worse. So how did I deal with this, and did I deal with it the right way? First of all, let me just say, because I'm doing this video, you can probably tell it has been mostly resolved. Luckily, and again, this is where I have some privilege and some good fortune that other people don't. I have people in my company that turns out deal with this sort of thing and are invested in me not losing my accounts and have connections to these social media companies. So it took a long time. It took almost a week for it to get mostly resolved, but I have access back to my accounts. Again, I said I'm gun shy, so I haven't posted a lot. It's not completely resolved. And as far as the financial stuff and the identity stuff goes, I took all the necessary steps that I was supposed to take, but who knows what could happen with that, what could come up down the line. It could pop up at any time for anyone. So I don't really know if that's completely resolved yet. But the question is kind of, what did I do? And what am I taught to do in these situations to deal with crippling fear? Because dealing with crippling fear is a huge part of life. And it's also a huge part of recovery. I know it's a huge part of Christianity. And we have teachings in recovery to deal with these situations. And first of all, it's like pray, right? Pray to my higher power. And I did that. And I prayed for peace, and I prayed for not my will, but my higher power's will to be done. And I prayed for perspective and for the proper outcome, not the outcome that I wanted, but the proper outcome. I would love to tell you that helped more than it did, but it didn't. But you know what? I checked it off the list. I was doing the right thing with that. I kept myself moving for the most part. When I got up that next morning, not only did I not really sleep, it was kind of a couple hours of in and out, so I was exhausted. But I just, it's that thing of like depression, of you're crawled up in a ball in your bed and you don't want to get out. You don't want to face the world. You're just mortified of what's going to happen next. What happened behind you is going to materialize further. And you know what? I could have taken a day off, I suppose, but I believed that the right thing for me to do was to get up and face the music. And it was really, really hard. But I got up and I did my job. And again, I apologize if you're sitting here thinking, God, big deal. Wham. This happens. You screwed up. This is part of life. And I certainly appreciate that perspective. I'm just being honest and trying to be vulnerable about what I was going through. And if this is the worst thing that ever happens to me, then I will have had a great life. It's not, because there's been a lot worse things that have happened to me in the past, but this is just how I dealt with this. So the other things that I'm supposed to do, right? I'm supposed to call the people in recovery that can help talk me through these things. And this is where I made a mistake. The first call I made was my dad, who I love and who has been pretty good throughout most of my life. This was mostly in my younger years. It hasn't been as much recently because I quite frankly haven't needed to lean on him emotionally that much. But he historically had been very good at, being very realistic and rational. He's not a particularly rational person normally, but in these situations, he was always really good. Like when the S hits the fan, that's one of his best traits, is he can be, in the right situations, he can be very supportive and comforting and realistic at the same time. And the thing that I hadn't considered, because I was just in such a huff, was how disconnected an almost 70-year-old man is from the weight of the situation that I was going through. Because there's just a generational gap with the importance of social media and how involved they are with it and all that sort of stuff. So that did not go well. All right. And so when that happened, it added another layer of, oh my gosh, I don't have anyone who's going to really understand this. And again, I was feeling embarrassment and shame. So I didn't, and I should have, this is one of the mistakes I made. I didn't call people closer to my age that are in the program that know how to walk through this sort of stuff, because I got so gun shy about that one. And again, I was embarrassed. I didn't want to admit that it was bothering me so much. But the other thing is that most of my circle in recovery is people that are much older than me. And that was for a reason. That was because I love the wisdom that comes from people who have so much more time and more life experience than me. And in almost every situation in recovery and life, it has benefited me that these people are so much older than me. In this case, it did not, because there's just that generational gap of understanding of social media and all this stuff. So that's where I failed the most, is that after I called my dad and it didn't go well, because he just didn't have an understanding of it, I didn't then continue to reach out to other people. That is where I kind of went into that ball even more. Luckily, on one hand, the weekend came so I could sleep a little bit and relax a little. But the problem was I went more into my shell, as I've told you I'm prone to do, if I don't take my teachings and take the things that I've gotten gradually better at over time and get up off my ass and go take some action. After that point, I did not take enough action. Another thing that I'm taught to do in these situations to deal with crippling fear is to go do something for somebody else. You know, go do something charitable. Go to a soup kitchen. Go help the homeless. I didn't do that. I'm taught to go to a meeting. I didn't do that. I screwed up there too. Now, again, I had some stuff that was already kind of in line. I was already really busy. That's one of the good and bad things about this, is that I had things to kind of distract me, but it's one of those situations, you know this, when you have something that's that impactful that happens to you, it doesn't really matter the different things that you have going on that could distract you, because your mind is just going to be on this all the time. And unfortunately, you know, it's one of those situations where no one can really tell you it's going to be okay. And like, people can tell you it's going to be okay, but they can't tell you here's the likely outcome, because it's just kind of one of those weird things that a lot of people have experienced, but not everyone has gone through, and everyone understands the weight of it a little bit different. Again, in my case, it's very linked to my career. And as you know, I'm a workaholic and I value my career too much. So it just had this crazy, crazy impact on me. And from the call from my dad to then over that weekend not taking enough action, I really was sort of sitting in this loneliness, and it really was just kind of hitting me all at once. You know, I've talked about just like pandemic, and now I've been told I talk about this too much, so I'm going to try not to do my whole tale of woe and sob story about it, because big freaking deal. I'll be better eventually, I'm sure. But it really hit home, just like, oh my gosh, I don't have anyone right next to me to kind of talk through this with me. And over this time period, my relationships are not strong enough to where I feel like I have other people to reach out to. And that was a real dark place for me. And I didn't think about using or anything like that, but I was just dealing with a lot of fear and a lot of sadness and a lot of feeling just kind of alone in the world. And I know now, enough time has gone by, it's been about 10 days, that I know what I did wrong. I know what I did right. I know what I need to do better when an instance of crippling fear happens to me again. But I also know that I gotta keep working. I have to keep doing things that I think, or that other people that I trust and I believe tell me will help me get better in these situations and kind of curb some of that loneliness and do things to branch out more so that my circle is not so small and that I don't feel so isolated and alone. And I'm sure some of this has been out of my control because of just the events of the past couple of years that have affected all of us. But I do believe that I need to do more. I don't know. I can't tell you today exactly what those extra things are, besides I should have called more people in recovery, and I should have gotten up and gone and done something for somebody else. Those are the two things that I really should have done differently. But I know whatever it is that I got to keep working to fortify my circle of loved ones and friendships, because it's not where it needs to be for me. It's not where I want it to be. And I know it can be better. So that's really the next step for me. And it's also, I had the thought plenty of times during this whole process of, okay, if I lose everything, social media wise, I will be okay. I knew I would be okay. I just was really fearful about what all, just the fear of the unknown is a huge thing, right? And the unknown of what the other shoes that could drop, particularly with like the identity stuff and the financial stuff, it was just really, really hard on me. Can they get into my mortgage? Can they take out loans in my name? Like all that sort of stuff was running through my head. And it still is to a degree, but obviously with time, these things get better. And again, with some resolution, these things get better. But what I know is that I but I don't want to go through another one of these situations, and I will. And it'll probably, the next time I deal with a situation of crippling fear, the potential consequences will probably be much worse than losing my social media accounts. Again, I know this is just like an incredibly trivial thing on its face and embarrassed about it, but I'm being honest. I need to be in a situation, I want to be in a situation where my circle is more fortified to where I am able to connect and reach out to people better than I did in this situation. So that's the biggest learning experience for me from this. So anyways, no mail today because I haven't been able to do much on social media, and there haven't been many comments. I would say there hasn't. If you think about it, it's to that Wednesday. It's only like 3 days since my last video, so hopefully there'll be more after this one, because I really want to hear from you. Have you been through this? Was it a walk in the park? How did you get through it? And more importantly, I think what are some experiences that have brought you crippling fear, and how did you best get through that? Or what are you glad you did, that you did right, and what do you wish you had done better in that situation? It doesn't have to be involved in social media at all. I just want to know how you have dealt with crippling fear in these situations. And hopefully we'll have some great comments to then go in to next week and talk about. But if you'd like to reach out, you can comment on this video or any video on the channel, or you can contact me on any of the following social media feeds. If you'd like to have a private conversation, you can, of course, send a direct message. I will not share anything that happens on DM without asking first. I have access, so I can actually see all these things now. Any comment that comes on a public post is fair game. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Hey family, if you like what we're doing here and you want to see more, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. Share it with someone who you think might benefit from watching this, and feel free to comment below. Love.